we'll go ahead and get us kicked off then. Hello, everyone. I'm Stephanie Boozer with CUGC HQ, and happy to welcome you to today's webinar with Automai. I always want to say Automai, but I had to correct myself there. It's Automai. I'm going to be learning about some automation that's going to help you guys out. But before I get into that, I want to go ahead and talk about a couple of events coming up. Our next Excel event after tomorrow, actually, which is in New York, but you can't register anymore. It's all closed. But the next one is in Bengaluru on June 28th. So if you happen to be in that area, love to have you sign up. And then after that, our virtual Excel is on July 13th, and we have a lot of great speakers lined up for both events. In just a bit, I'll put a chat link in for you so you can go and check out the events calendar and see the agenda. Also, we want to invite you, if you haven't already, to join our CUGC Slack and or Discord channels. You can scan that QR code, fill out a quick form. Let us know if you'd like to join your private local group Slack channel, and we'll get you set right up. All right, and we are recording today's session, and you'll get a recording link tomorrow in email. You can look for that from me. Also, if there's any resources that Leee wants to share, I'll make sure those are included as well. Please type your questions in the Q&A panel as you have them. We're going to get to as many as we can today. I think we're probably going to save most of them for the end of the session, but go ahead and type those in as you have them. And again, feel free to say hello and talk to everyone else in the chat. Love to hear from y'all. All right, so with us today, I have Leee Jeffries. He is an Automai EUC subject matter expert and a CTP. And quite frequently, I'm introducing Leee as a moderator. So it's nice to have Leee on as a presenter today. Hello, Leee.
Hi, Stephanie. Pleasure to be here as always.
Awesome. And then we have watching in what is usually Lee's place is our moderator today is Ray Davis. Many of you may be familiar with Ray's blogs. He does a lot of really great in-depth blogs for CUGC, and I'm glad to have him on with us today to help with the Q&A discussion. So hello, Ray.
Hello, everybody. Pleasure to be here.
All right, I'm going to turn things over to you now, Leee. Oops. Okay, there we go. You can grab the screen and get us going.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Right. Okay, cool. Thanks for the intro, Stephanie. Hi, everyone. And just in case the intro was a bit short earlier, I'm Leee Jeffries, working for Automai as an EUC subject matter expert, and I'm a current CTP. So I love all things automation, new technology, but a lot of my career has been spent in the area of performance testing. So I've used lots of different products in that field. And as it's been such a large part of my career, I've joined with Automai as an EUC SME to sort of work with their product and push it towards the end user compute market. So I'm usually active on Twitter, so you can check me out there. And also Automai has a YouTube page with some videos that I've recorded to get you started. So if you want to go and try the product, you can actually follow those videos, download some scripts from GitHub, and it's really quick to deploy the software and start using it. And if you're interested in sort of kicking the tires a little bit more, you can always reach out to me directly. So before we get started with like an agenda and a large chunk of the presentation, I want to talk a little bit about RPA. And I think RPA is a term that's used in technology a lot, but it doesn't really make a lot of sense to people, especially not in EUC, not unless they have a separate team. So in a lot of my experience working in EUC environments, you would normally be in a business and they would have an RPA team. So especially sort of in insurance areas, an RPA is robotic process automation. You are essentially detailing a process, and then you are replacing a person's process flow. So something that's quite time consuming, not someone's job, But say you have two systems, they don't have APIs, they cannot talk to each other. You could use something like RPA to transfer data from one of those systems to another. So rather than someone manually inputting that data, they transfer that over. So that's where RPA comes into its own. So Automai was founded primarily as an automation and testing company. A little bit more about how RPA is going to relate. So we're going to talk about the Citrix lifecycle management and how I feel a Citrix project would run and how sort of all those different things will link together. So in terms of process, we'll branch out into other providers' software. So specifically, like I said, Citrix. And generally, in a VDI environment, these stages are crucial to providing a well-running solution with automation being at its core. So it doesn't really matter what you're working with nowadays. That automation piece seems to be something that is very, very embedded. And you sort of need to start thinking about that straight off the bat. So when we're talking about maintaining, assessing environments, planning, designing and deploying, all of these things have some sort of automation hook in there to make life a little bit easier. And it's not really about convenience. It's more about making sure your numbers are correct and being able to go back and repeat things and they're the same as they were last time. So you have consistency and you have baselines, and that's sort of where we're going with the automation front. You don't have to be a genius to automate things. There are products out there, wink, wink, that'll do that job for you. So what's our agenda look like? So I wanted to talk a bit about the company and what the company does, the sort of companies that we deal with. We're going to then walk through and look at Citrix in particular, virtual apps and desktops. We will look at DaaS. We're going to look at sort of how they're structured. And I want to look at the general life cycle of a project, the sort of roles that the software Automai can play there. And then specifically with those roles, what does that mean? And then I have a section where I'm going to attempt live demos. So wish me luck. I haven't sacrificed any small animals, so we'll just have to see how that pans out. So Automai was originally founded in 2000, and it was a small consultancy company that was actually implementing testing software. And for the first 2 years, it was a main consulting business. Then 2002 started selling that testing software and consulting. So it was a bit more of a joined up approach. And then in 2005, the first version of Automai, or the smart robot engine, was put together. And that became software that then was being sold. So from 2005 to 2018, Automai has been used to automate many different things, many different processes. So we are talking performance testing, continuous monitoring, automating processes with RPA, but also automated functional testing. We've even got people that use this tool for app packaging. So automating lots of different things, because the tool is mainly UI driven. It's very easy to pick up. So this whole suite of products beds into the EUC market quite well. And that's what we're going to talk about.
Hey, Lee, are you sharing slides by chance? I just want to make sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, the screen that we see, Bud, is just shows your RDP manager.
That's not very good, is it? I'm gonna have to run through those again, mate. Right, hang on. Because when I press F5 on my PowerPoint, you still don't see the slides.
I don't.
That's weird. Okay, how are we gonna get around this then?
Sorry to cut you off. I just wanted to.
No, I'm glad you did, because there's me chatting away, and I am looping through slides, by the way. Okay. I'm sure we can fix this. It's set up to present on that monitor and everything. Okay. So if I move this around, you see this, right?
No, we just see the automate. Oh.
You
We
still
just see.
got
Looks like you're sharing the app, the automated RDP app, excuse me. Remote Desktop Manager.
No, I'm screen sharing, but for some reason it's not updated. Definitely screen sharing.
Okay.
Let me try it again. You should see a background.
Yes, looks like my backyard.
Perfect. Right. So now you should see the slides.
Yes, perfect.
Okay.
I got you
So
now.
none of that stuff's going to make any sense now. So I'm going to quickly recap. That was a Zoom bug, I think. So I talked about RPA when I first started off and how that fits into to just automating processes generally and potentially getting disparate systems to be able to talk to each other. This was the slide that I was actually sitting on. So there's aims of that, which are detailed in that diagram. Then I moved on to talk about a Citrix lifecycle management. And this was the diagram that I was sort of elaborating on. So you have that automation bit in the middle, and then around the edges there, you have your assessment, planning, design, deploy, and maintenance. So automation being key in this sort of scenario. And Ray, by all means, interrupt me if my slides aren't updating or something.
Will do. Thank you.
Okay. And this was the agenda that I elaborated on. And I mentioned we're going to walk through what I think the life cycle is of a Citrix deployment, and then how RPA fits into that, and then specifically the facets of Automai and how that's all going to slot in, and maybe where that should slot in to a project. And then I talked about live demos and sacrificing small animals. So we got to this slide where I was talking about Automai's history and how that all began and where we are now. And then I got to this slide where we talk about the sorts of customers that use the software. So the EUC market is quite a new, not a new thing and quite a new thing. So it's a small share of Automai's business as a whole at the moment. And that is the direction that we're going to be moving in, or that's my game plan right now. So virtual apps and desktops. Now we're on a CUGC webinar, so everybody probably knows about virtual apps and desktops. But just in case you don't, and you joined for the Automai piece specifically, it's a powerful virtualization product that is able to deliver desktops and applications anywhere on any device. And it's all done remotely and securely. So Automai fits into that solution in particular and is able to automate actions within virtual apps and desktops. If you're using virtual apps and desktops on-prem, this architecture diagram may look familiar to you. So there's the various components, and Automai actually is able to log into a Citrix environment from the outside and from the inside of a network. You don't have to worry too much about what the interface is or what authentication providers you're using. You will be able to integrate this pretty seamlessly. You can also integrate it at the back end if you wish and not involve any of the Citrix infrastructure at all. So that's virtual apps and desktops on-prem. Then we have our Citrix DaaS. So this is Citrix Cloud. And that's a very similar process. We have our Citrix Gateway service at the front, if you happen to be using that. And Automai is able to log in from that external service. It's very simple to record a scenario where that's possible. And then you've also got your session hosts or your VDAs on the inside of the network. We're able to integrate there too. So it doesn't matter which solution you're using from a Citrix standpoint. Okay. So what about a virtual desktop project? So the life cycle of a Citrix deployment usually begins with assessing and planning phases. And then once you've completed those, you'll move on to design. Dead simple, but that's a lot more complicated than it actually sounds. So during that stage, organizations usually define their requirements by assessing their users' needs, devices, and access requirements for applications. The next step then is to assess the infrastructure needs based off of those requirements and create some sort of blueprint or a design. Now, once you have that blueprint or a design, you would then normally go ahead and you'd move on to a build phase. You know, you procure your tin or your hardware, or you deploy in a cloud environment. Now, once the deployment's complete, the organization would usually go through some sort of testing approach. Now, that may be a manual, getting users to log in and test apps, some sort of UAT phase, or it may be a performance testing scalability type scenario where you'd want to kick the tires and see how much load you could put on there before they fall off. And that's all things that are pretty standard, maybe not so much on smaller scale environments, but definitely larger ones. And then your production rollout. So that's where you make your environment available to your end users. They log in and they start using it day to day to do their jobs and business. And then finally, you move on to a monitoring and maintenance phase where you'll be performing upgrades, application updates, and then you'll be looking at your performance and making sure that the environment continues to perform how you originally designed it to. So here's a question for everyone, and hopefully Stephanie's going to catch this, but there's a poll here for you, and I'm dead interested to see what everybody thinks. Oh, I get to answer this too. Absolutely. Stephanie, do I just wait until this disappears?
Yeah, I'm gonna give it a few more seconds. I was curious if you can see how they're answering, or if it's just me.
We just see it and they don't see anything yet.
Cool. All right, I'll give it about 3 more seconds.
No worries. So this is it could be any tool, doesn't have to be any specific thing. It's just, you know, how do you really size or analyze an existing environment? How do you look at an existing environment to then be able to redesign a new one off that basis?
All right, I'll share the results for you. There was a big winner.
Cool. So that's sort of what I expected, because it's very difficult, firstly, to know which tool to use, and secondly, even if you have the tool, where do you slot it in the process? And that's always a challenge, right? Because you have to allocate a chunk of time for that, and the time that is being spent on that process is really not appreciated. But it's really important. So let's talk about RPA and how that fits into use cases. So RPA generally supports all of the technologies that we talk about. When we talk about EUC environments, when we talk about performance testing and continuous monitoring, that's all RPA. That is robotic process automation. Okay, so if you want to load an environment, you are simulating some sort of real user actions, and that is RPA. So when we say Automai has been around for many, many years doing RPA, well, pretty much experts at having tools that can produce real user actions. And image recognition is a key point in this as well, by the way. Everything is done from the user front end. So continuous monitoring. Everybody talks about this, and there's lots of tools that monitor uptime and things. Any scenario that you create with Automai can be used in a performance testing scenario, or a continuous monitoring scenario, or a testing scenario, all of it. So when we talk about continuous monitoring, we want to monitor Citrix infrastructure. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean we are tracking the nuts and bolts of what the broker is doing. Is it healthy? It means we're a user and we want to log in and we want to see what happens when we log in. So we will take screenshots when problems happen, and that will enable you to be notified and then look at the screenshot, and you will see exactly what the user would see when the problem happened. So from a front end, you'll always get some sort of metric on how long things take, whatever those steps may be. And that enables you to take decisions and make changes. Now, what about UAT? So because Automai is UI driven, there is no coding for you to add your apps into this flow of putting it into these processes. You can literally do everything graphically and point and click, just like a user would when they're using the apps. So if you can create a manual UAT scenario that would be manually performed by a consumer of your platform, then you can put it into this tool and you can replay that at will at any point in time. And that enables all of these nice benefits, including accelerating time to production. Now, I don't know about everybody else on the call, but I've been in a lot of projects where we've done application packaging via a third party, and those applications have to be tested. And that's despite all of the newfangled tech and modern workspace slogans, people still do that nowadays. Everybody still has packaging teams that are packaging apps and deploying them to virtual environments. So having automated test cases is really useful, especially in EUC environments, because we get a lot of people shouting at us when it breaks. So what about Loader? So we have 3 products. I should have said that. Tester, Watcher, and Loader. Watcher is continuous monitoring. Tester is the UAT parts or application testing, and then Loader is performance. I've lost the words now. Scaling and performance testing. It's on the screen. So with performance testing with Loader, we get response metrics for all of the apps that we have in a performance test, and it gives us a rough idea of scalability because we also capture backend metrics. So we can test the configuration of the environment and make sure that that all stands up. We don't have any erroneous prompts and things like that. And then we can also test the infrastructure because we're loading from the front end. So we're connecting all those users through Storefront or your gateway or your NetScaler, and we're causing traffic to be generated so we can see bottlenecks. So what does a project schedule look like? So thinking about what we said earlier about the Citrix project lifecycle, I think this is where the Automai platform fits in at each layer. So sizing is extremely important in a VDI environment. We've all been there using some recommended metrics or supplier sizing. With Automai, you can scan the existing environment with Watcher, so you can set up some continuous monitoring on what's already there, capture some metrics about how that's behaving, and then you can develop some sort of performance benchmark using application response times, and you can monitor the infrastructure to see if there's any headroom there. So you will know instantly what your application response time should look like on a new platform as a minimum, and you should know whether or not there's headroom in the existing environment or the wheels are falling off. And that's without having to talk to consumers of the platform, and it's without having to rely on any sort of assumptions, right? So just to be clear, you deploy the product once and you have all of these things. Yes, you have to pay the licensing for it, of course, but you have all these different solutions at your fingertips. So once it's deployed, hook it into different environments. So those figures that you get are then factored into your design, which now becomes much simpler because you actually know exactly what your design needs to look like. You know what you're aiming for, and you know what your existing is. So we've got that with continuous monitoring. And if anything changes before we've finished our design, we can reevaluate. It's not the end of the world, and it's pretty quick. We've got all the numbers, which is half the battle. So after a build process, we can simulate a similar load to the current production environment. So we can actually, if we want to, load test the existing environment or a facet of it to see what we get there, and then we can do a direct comparison there too, which again is really valuable. And we'll performance test our new environment using Loader, and then we can validate what we said in our design. We can say, hey, with the performance test, actually this all stacks up. It actually all makes sense. At the point of UAT, we can deploy Tester to test client applications. Functional tests can be built in with this. So if you think when you've deployed an environment, maybe you'll turn off some things, maybe you'll do some failover, you can run this stuff at the same time, and it will tell you if it has a problem trying to connect in whilst you're doing your functional testing. So even if you don't want to go through the pain of writing all of the UAT test cases for all of the applications, the 400 you have or something like that, then you can still use this to do functional testing in that way and see if there's any impacts before you put users on the platform. And then lastly, I think we should monitor the performance during rollout to make sure that it sticks to what we wrote in our design. And that enables us to gauge performance and react accordingly if any tweaks need to be made. So just to clarify, monitoring applications, performance testing, and functional testing. So question for everybody, if you are either administering an environment or you're part of a project with one being deployed, do you performance test or monitor deployments that you've worked on? And this one I am interested in, right? Because I don't think many people performance test environments before they roll them. I think a lot of people do it with real users, which is still valid, right? It's just I think you need to do both.
All right, let it go just a little bit longer.
You need a little clock, don't you, Stephanie? Like a
Need to play music.
yeah.
All right, I will end it in 3, 2, 1. And there you go.
Okay. All right. That's surprising. That is interesting. Yeah. Okay. So people do performance test, a majority actually. Okay, cool. So this is the slide where we talk about scalability. So you will see there performance testing on the left. We have these tiny little robot heads. That's what we call bots, or our loaders, our users, our testers, but they're robot. R stands for robot. So we have robot testers, robot loaders, and robot watchers. And that's how they're clarified. And it literally, if you think about the size of the heads, that is exactly how many of those bots you may have per type of activity. So performance testing, you scale out those bots and you have a lot, and you can test individual applications, or you can test desktops or whatever you want. Websites, doesn't matter. You don't need a virtual desktop environment to be able to do any testing. Functional testing as well. Okay, so maybe you'll just have 3 users that do that from different groups in the company with different apps. And you're monitoring, well, you may just have a couple of bots that do different things depending on your applications. And then your RPA is a bit different. But the idea of this is that you go from your development of your project to the operational side of things. And then if you're doing RPA, there's something called worker, which I haven't discussed too much because it doesn't really relate to UC. Then you also support the business through robotic process automation. So let's talk process in a project. We just talk about where it fits in the project lifecycle. And I want to talk a little bit about project aims when you're using tools like this, because it's actually quite important that the message is really clear from the very beginning on what your project aims are. So remember to set testing aims prior to commencing any testing. It's important to understand outcomes and makes the information you capture more efficient. It's no good running a tool, capturing tons of information, and then trying to work out maybe how you analyze this later to draw some conclusions. Try and set your conclusions right off the bat. So then you're aligning your test cases and your goals to what you previously agreed. It really helps keep it clear, and it avoids this big red line that I've got in the diagram there. So if you're interested in login performance and you want to see if the environment is got headroom, then you may want to capture CPU memory, disk IO, queues, things like that. But the whole idea is you run the tests, you review the data, you draw some conclusions from the data, and then depending on those conclusions, you remediate or you make some changes. Now, I've never worked on a project where you run your performance tests or whatever it is that you're doing, and then you don't have anything to remediate. Like manufacturers of software add random stuff in their apps all the time, pop-ups, other little processes that just mess things up, or they change the whole look and feel of something, which is I won't name any names, but there's a certain productivity set of apps that people use that seems to change on a regular basis. So you may be missing some key performance metrics or something like that. So once you run your tests, you evaluate your data, maybe you realize actually maybe we should have captured this. We've got this app that has a really high write profile, so we need some more performance metrics in there. But the red line is repeat your tests, essentially. If something changes, go back and do your tests again. So automation is really key in this sort of area. As I mentioned earlier, there are some nice scripts on GitHub, and we are working on a PowerShell module for all of the APIs in the product too. So we should have some nice bedded DevOpsy type stuff done and dusted soon. So once all your tests are complete, move on to continuous monitoring. Make sure your data stays that way. All right, that's the plan. So for those of you that answered the last poll, if you are testing environments or you have tested environments, did you consider the time that you spent testing your environments a success? Was it a waste of time?
Hopefully not.
Hopefully not, yeah.
Let's see, I'll give them a few more seconds.
Do you have a stopwatch, Stephanie?
It's counting down for me, but
Be good.
all right. How about 3, 2, 1? Pencils down. Okay, there you go.
71% resounding yes. It was a success, so that's good. That's good. Okay. Then you drew some good conclusions, and you obviously know all the tricks that I'm talking about already. So without further ado, let's hop into a bit of a live demo. Let's say demo. Right. Okay. I've moved the window, messed it all up. Okay. So Automai is primarily a web-based product, as in everything is orchestrated through a browser. There's not like a specific different tool. Everything runs on Windows though, right? And there are two main components. You have your Automai director, which is your database where you store your test configuration and where it pulls all the data in. And then you have one of these, which is called a bot manager. And you might notice over here, they've got different pre-appended titles. There's R-loaders, there's testers, and then there's watchers. So there are 3 different products there. Now, the product is reliant on remote desktop services. So if I drag up Task Manager here and I show you users, you will see that on this Windows machine, each one of these little windows that are providing the automation is actually a local remote desktop session. And that's how it works. Very simple. So you stand up a machine, you install remote desktop services, and you install a bot manager. If you're very lucky to have some sort of tool that is able to clone and spin out servers, a bit like machine creation services or PBS, if you're a Citrix person, then you can spin these out automatically, and then you can reel them all back in again when you're done. Dead easy. So let's log in. Let's log in. And we see some stuff. In the top left, we have a drop down for all of our different products. So we've got tester, watcher, and we're already on loader. So where should I start? I think we'll start with loader, and I'll move on to test plans. Your dashboard is not fantastically interesting. It does tell you what the results were of your last test. However, I'm going to run through all the test plans and the individual test runs. So what I want to do is kick off a test run. So I'm actually going to kick off a performance test. We're going to do this one. And this is our standard set of EUC workloads. Specifically though, it's a browser-based workload only. I've chosen not to run any Office in particular in this one. So you can see here straight away, I'm going to run 5 users in this test. And my ramp up policy is I'm going to start 1 user every 45 seconds. Now that may seem a little bit lax because, but it's a tiny little lab environment I have actually running in a suitcase, believe it or not. And there's just four session workers in there. And I want each of them to run 1 iteration of all the tests. So if I just kick that off, yep, all right, it says I've only got 4 R loaders, so I will run it with a lesser number. Okay, if I hop over to my bot manager, just so you can clearly see actually what happens, you'll see a notification in the bottom right there. It's telling you things are happening. It's been sent some instructions, and there you see it connecting into my Citrix desktop in my lab, and it's going to perform all the normal automated actions that I would have in my performance test. So whilst that runs and filters along, I told you it was live, genuinely is live. I have some tests that I made earlier. So first we'll go over the test plans, right? I want to show you all the details in here. So bot managers, you can have lots of different bot managers. As I said, you can sort of spin those out. So if I wanted some for testing, some for watching, and some for loading, I can do that. Okay, I can choose the number of users I want, the ramp up time. I can actually choose to run the scenarios for just a fixed point in time, or I can run iterations where every user will perform a certain set of tasks. And then we have this concept of personas. Now this is really cool. And as far as I know, we're the only people doing this, but we have the ability to be able to link into Azure via APIs and pull performance metrics directly for Azure Virtual Desktop. We have WMI, we have general Azure performance monitoring, and then we have a Citrix DaaS on Azure and Citrix DaaS on AWS. And we can actually link into the provider's APIs and pull all the performance metrics into the tool. I'm using WMI because I have an on-prem lab. Call me old school. And then just down the bottom here, we have all the details about the workflow. Now this workflow is really simple because actually the scripts that are set up for the EUC workloads are very complex. So we are simply choosing here what we want to do. There's a CSV file with all our user details in it for our Citrix environment, and we're just running through those really simply. And we have a set of global variables. Now, something that I didn't want people to have to do when they use these workloads is actually start to tweak them to the way that they want them to work. So if you don't want to run Outlook, for example, then I don't want you to have to go and take that out of the workload. So there's a bunch of variables in here on the right. And this actually dictates how the workload behaves. So if I don't want to run Excel, I just set this to a 0. And if I do want to run it, I just set it to a 1. So you can choose to close the apps or leave the apps open, which is quite a big one. I've just realized I'm sort of looking to the right all the time. I apologize for that because the other screen is over here. Whether or not you want to leave the browser tabs open or run the browser or not run the browser, whether you want video. So you can choose to leave the browser open and add multiple tabs to the browser, or it will close all the apps and then start the next one. We support 365 caching. So you can change this to 365 and it won't put Outlook into a PST mode with a local file. It'll actually try and allow the user to log in to Office 365 and connect to a cloud mailbox. And then we have some other config parameters that would be specific to your environment if you were deploying. So where the content zip file is for the stock workloads. If you're logging into different virtualization providers, there's other parameters here, including your Citrix Cloud URL, your storefront URL, what your Citrix desktop name is. And then you may not install Chrome where we think Chrome is. So you can put your own path in there if you think you wanted it somewhere different. And same with all of the apps that we rely on. So there's tons of flexibility in how these workloads can be used. And then right down the bottom, if you want to, you can put in email notification, or you can select a webhook, which means you can push notifications directly into something like a Teams channel or a Slack channel. So pretty flexible stuff. So let's have a look at test runs, because test runs are cool, right? Doing these tests is great. And this should be running now full flow. It is. Users are doing things, great. And then we have some tests that we ran earlier. So let's go and look at what are we? All workloads. So this is everything. So if we scroll down the bottom, this is our list of actions in a workload. So how long do logons take? Okay, well, my maximum value was 48 seconds. And then my average response was 26. That's pretty good, like that. Then we've got different stages of our workload. So I fire up the BBC website and we see how long that takes to load. Really fast. Should be. I pay enough for my internet. And then we've got things like launching Outlook. How long does that take? What about Chrome, for example? So here, it's down the bottom, I think. We have Word, we have Outlook. So any apps that are in the workload, it will give you metrics for starting them up. It gives you metrics for closing the apps down. And it also gives you metrics for how long the workloads take to run generally. The video ones are actually fixed for a point in time. It sits and waits and plays a video. So, you know, not too much there, but we have timers for lots of different things in a workload, and they're all available. You can just export reports of raw data if you want to go and analyze that in some other tool. So our graphing has been revamped recently. So we can actually click and drag and it zooms us in. You can then hold the control key on a keyboard and you can drag these left to right, which is pretty sweet. Anything you hover over gives you metrics. And what I can also do here is say, hey, I would like to see the processor usage from all the machines that I decided I wanted to capture. And that looks a bit messy, right? Because now I've got processor metrics from everything. So I can filter here. And I can say, actually, I don't want these ones. I don't want to know what my domain controller is doing at that point in time. I would just like CPU usage of a session server. And then I want to see what happens here. I had some sort of failure. That's not good. So you'll notice as you add more metrics, you get more bars on the left-hand side that split out actually what that is. So it's mixed data and it's a percentage. So we have 74% CPU at this point in time. Very close to when we were probably logging users in, so that makes sense. And then I can see that I have an error. So I can go down here, I can click this, and I get a screenshot, and it tells me it failed waiting for a window to disappear. So it said it was waiting for Chrome actually to appear, and Chrome never appeared. So that's why I have a problem. It's pesky when Windows doesn't launch the things that you want it to launch. So that's great. I can overlay these, but it gets a bit messy. What if I want to look just at metrics in detail? I can click my backend metrics, and I can actually go in here and look. Now, every server that I had in my test, it's captured all of these metrics on the right for each different servers. You can specify different metrics for different servers. So my session servers, I can see here now I've got memory, I've got network interface, all this different stuff. I'll have write profiles. I can hop across to my file server and see what that was doing there. So during your test, you can just pop through these and see what was happening. So I can see here during my login, it's much busier. I don't even have to know what these metrics are because the graph tells me actually my disk writes per second were relatively high because everybody was logging in at the same point in time. So that all comes as standard, right? What happens if I then want to look at a couple of different runs? So let me just, my browser only. Yeah, why not? Let's go with these ones. So we will compare a couple of tests together. So here I have two tests overlaid, and I can actually see here, I've still got some errors. Let me find the one I wanted. I think actually it's in here. Yep. I mentioned about application vendors adding things into their product that just break stuff. Here's a good example. Anybody seeing this in their environment? Damn it. So I just noticed last couple of days that now this is popping up for the users I'm testing with. Not consistently, just sometimes. So if anybody knows how to remove that and get rid of it, please ping me, because I'm going to spend a bit of time digging into that, and it will be on a blog eventually. But comparing tests. So we can actually look at how long it took to run the entire test between two different tests. And the pretty cool thing is I can compare back-end metrics between two tests as well. So even when you're comparing tests, you still get all the rich data and information between test 1 and test 2, and you can just literally line those things up together and see during your login period, is it the same for, say, a different machine spec or something like that? So really, really powerful stuff. And for someone that's worked in performance testing for a long time, I know how valuable this sort of stuff is to be able to dig in. And the period that you configure this for is actually configurable. So I've showed you one set of results with 30-second intervals and one set with 5-second intervals. So this is Loader, and that's in a nutshell what it does. So you can drag all this data out of these tests, and you get really detailed information when things do fail. Let's jump over to Watcher, our continuous monitoring tool. So I have two different workloads. One for MS Paint, and that sounds quite simple, right? But it's not, and I'll explain why. And one for WordPad. Now, the apps don't really matter. It's what you do with the apps that counts. So with WordPad, if you type into a document and you save it in your profile area, then you know that even though your user got logged in, their profile area is actually okay. So you can actually write something out with WordPad and save it into a space where you know needs to be available. And that's important, because on the first run of this workload, if the document is not there, it writes it out and it saves it to that location. And then on the second run of the workload, it actually opens it up from that location. So you can see here the different areas. I've got one overall workload, and what it's telling you here is how long that workload takes to run every single time. So I can go back and I can compare that historically. So if I click on WordPad here, I get a breakdown, and then I'm able to go back in time and look at different metrics. And I can just compare. I mean, you have got such a granular set of measurements here. We're talking like point something of a second, just to show you that over time, this is how this is running. It shows you errors in exactly the same way that Loader does. So you haven't got to worry about if there is a problem. In fact, the network location one, I think, oh no, the paint one hasn't had any problems. Sorry, the paint one has had problems. So if I click here, I can see there was a point where I was faffing around with the lab and it didn't run. So 4 different various reasons. So what do we do with Paint? What I actually do with Paint is I draw something in Paint, and then I use the image recognition in the tool to check to see if that is actually there, if the drawing is correct. So not only is the tool automating the drawing part, it's then validating that what it drew is actually correct. So I like that. I think that's pretty cool. And again, we have back-end monitoring. So I can go and look. If I find a time window where maybe something wasn't working right, I can go and look at all my machines. I can see, was it my file server maybe being hammered, or was it one of my session servers? Maybe that wasn't having too much of a good time. So you have all the tools there to give you an indication on where to go and look if there's a problem. Okay, so I'm going to move on to tester because I'm eating through my time and I'd love to answer some questions. So tester is not designed to run how I'm showing you in a very continuous way. If it was UAT, you'd run a period of UAT and then you get some test results, right? And you would know what those sorts of cycles are. But I'm running this continuously, and this is why we've got this like big brown block, which isn't really a big brown block, because if I zoom in, you can see here it's running every 5 minutes, and it tells you how long it's been running for. Now, tester is not the same as all the other products that I've spoken about, because a test run, what a test run should be is I failed or I passed. So you get a succeeded or not. But a pretty cool thing here, what I've actually managed to do is integrate PowerShell into a workload to test if a network location is available. And if it is available and it can see it, it tries to write a file there, and then it deletes the file afterwards. So for this, I'm actually testing, are all my network locations writable for that user? Which again, is a pretty powerful thing just to be able to do for an EUC environment. And we've got things like, is the network location writable? So we can choose whether or not it writes to the location. Okay, so I reckon that test I ran right at the beginning, just to show you that it was doing its job. And I ran browser only, right? Yeah, that massively flopped. I had like 3 errors in that one. So let's go and have a look. Yeah, Chrome just did not want to work. Just did not appear. What else? Okay. Look, Chrome is updated and now I have a different UI. So stuff like this happens all the time, and it's sort of good and sort of bad. So we run this stuff continuously in a lab so that we can adapt the standard workloads on a regular basis. Anyway, that pretty much concludes the demo part. And I'm pretty much bang on time. So hopefully with this, you can see how Automai is going to fit into all the processes and all those different workflows. And then you can see actually how the product works. There's nothing like fabricated in this demo. It is completely 100% live, and I'm using it in the lab all the time. So my conclusion, Automai can enhance the deployment and general running of a Citrix virtual apps and desktops or DaaS environment by providing real front-end performance information and application response times. Automai's flexible approach to adding custom apps means you can add any process or application into any facets of the solution, be that continuous monitoring, performance testing, or UAT. So I think it's pretty cool. If you would like a demo or to kick the tires on the product, please reach out to us in one of those forms or contact me directly. I don't mind. And at that point, I would like to show you my question slide. This image was generated with Stable Diffusion, which is an image generating AI, which I set up. And I asked it to give me a picture of a robot answering questions. And this is what it gave me. So this is what you've got. So I'm open, right? I'm open.
There is one question. They ask, is Automai available for CSPs who have deployed Citrix on-prem?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So licensing is pretty flexible. We don't have like fixed terms or long contracts. If you need it for a period of time, you can have it for a period of time. Obviously, we want you to appreciate all of the different facets that it can support and where you should slide it into some sort of project. But yes.
There was another one, more of a statement. They were curious if this can be used to automate Citrix administrative task. And if so, maybe a future presentation.
Okay. That's an interesting ask. I mean, the tool itself, I didn't show you the workload generator because I just didn't have enough time for that, but it is like a point and click type solution. So anything that you can do manually as a user, it could automate for you. The things that you need to think about are where you would make a decision as an administrator, and then how you would automatically put that, make that decision in some sort of, the tool needs to have the information to make decisions. So as long as you can tell it what it should do, then yes. Absolutely.
It says, another one says, can it be extended to test Citrix secure browser?
Yep. So everything that you saw, as it was running that performance test, you would have seen that Citrix Workspace app was firing up to log the user into the session. So we don't have like a direct tool that links into a Citrix environment. We fire up Workspace app, and then we point and click on the screen. We don't have an agent that installs inside the virtual desktop. So we can automate absolutely anything. Websites, any sort of login flow is supported. Doesn't matter. You can put MFA on things. We have MFA support via a QR code or a secret key. So if you can provide those things to us, then we can put them in the workload and users can log in via MFA. Not a problem.
All righty. I believe you already covered this one. They just want to know how to initiate a conversation discussion for testing the tool in their data center.
No worries. If you drop an email on the site, so it's info@automai.com, just say that you were part of the webinar and you're interested in more info. And the team is mostly based in America. I'm in the UK, but we're geographically dispersed across the world. So whoever is on the right time zone when you send that email will pick that up and be in contact. Cool.
Looks like that's all I have.
Okay. Back over to you, Stephanie, I think.
All right. Thank you so much. I appreciate you being here today. It was a good, I like your robot answering questions, by the way.
Occasionally it messes up. You can see it's got like a bit of an extra arm thing going on. I don't know what that is.
I mean, yeah, that is it. Who knows?
I'm saving the other ones for like future presentations. I think it really turned out some weird stuff at points, and I was like, I'm not quite sure where it gets this stuff from, but definitely a discussion point. No, I want to thank everybody for coming as well. I really appreciate you listening to what I have to say.
Awesome. Thanks so much. And thank you, Ray. Thanks for being on here today.
My pleasure. Thanks for letting me be a part of it.
Thanks, Ray.
Thank you.
All right, well, everyone, well, I will send out this recording link to you tomorrow. If you have any other questions, just feel free to reach out and let us know. And we hope to see you at another event soon. And if you're in New York by chance and you've registered for the XL, maybe I'll see you tomorrow. So come and say hello. All right, everyone. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day and we'll see you again soon. Bye.
Thank you.